Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's March 2nd, 2022. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined as always by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day, presented as always by Life Wallet, where the time is now to take charge of your personal health. And Matt, the time is now for Jake Garcia because we are reporting today, the first to report this, I believe that Jake Garcia will be a full participant when spring practice starts on Monday. And I want to talk a little bit about what this means. Does Jake Garcia have a legitimate chance to challenge Tyler Van Dyke? Is it already preordained that Tyler will be the starting quarterback? There's a lot to unwrap as we get into Good Morning CaneSport today. So let's get right to it. And I've talked on this show many, many times about, I guess I'll call it an opinion because it's an opinion that if we were sitting here on September the 1st and we took a poll of every single person in the Miami Hurricanes organization, coaches, players, trainers, ball boys, ball girls, you name it, everybody in the organization last September 1st, I would be willing to bet that if you ask them who is the quarterback of the future at Miami, that 75% of them would have said Jake Garcia. So let me start there with you. Do you agree with that or disagree?
Okay, so it's more complicated than just agree or disagree, right? There are players.
I'm going to get to the other layers. I'm just starting.
But it's an impossible question to answer because there are players who are better in practice and there are players who are better in games. And Jake Garcia is a better practice player than Tyler Van Dyke because that's what everybody saw. That's what coaches saw. That's what we saw to a large extent. But what remains unanswered is if Jake Garcia is as good or better in games because he hasn't had the time or the reps to do it. Whereas we know Tyler Van Dyke's looked a heck of a lot better in games than he did in practice, or else there's no doubt that
you're jumping ahead on me. Okay,
okay.
I want to get into all these topics, but I'm trying to do this in layers. So layer number one,
I can't agree or disagree because it's an impossible question to answer.
But do you agree, based on what we were hearing at that point in time, that if a poll was taken September the 1st, that Jake Garcia would have gotten 75% of the vote if people were making a vote on who they thought would be the future quarterback at Miami?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, good. All right. So we agree on that. Okay, now they both play in the Central Connecticut State game. I believe that was the name of the opponent, right?
Yep.
Central Connecticut State. Okay. All right. So they both play in that game. They share reps. Probably looked pretty comparable to each other, right?
No, I think Tyler Van Dyke looked better, but they were playing with different units. I think Jake, if I remember correctly, the first series he had was pretty bad. I think his first pass was really off the mark, whereas Tyler was pretty on point. Guys were running free the whole game. So it was hard not to look good.
It's almost not even fair.
They both looked fine for the most part. If you want to nitpick, if you want to nitpick, Tyler looked better.
Okay. Jake Garcia gets hurt in that game and doesn't appear for the rest of the season. Tyler Van Dyke takes the ball and runs with it on steroids. Okay, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the country the second half of the season. Whether he was a good practice quarterback or not a good practice quarterback before September, he was a good practice quarterback after his debut and was an absolute stud the rest of the season. Which brings me to the next question. Does he by default get the starting quarterback job? Or does Jake Garcia, starting this spring with a new offensive coordinator, a new offense, a new everything really, does he get a fair shake to compete with Tyler Van Dyke?
Well, the most interesting thing to me is if you can go back in time and Jake doesn't get hurt. Remember those first two starts Tyler Van Dyke had? He was not good. And I have to think the indication we were getting at the time from Rhett Lashley was he was planning to use both quarterbacks
the whole year
following game. And if Jake Garcia had looked better, he sticks with a hot hand. That's what the coaches do. And then Jake may have never let the job go, and we'd be having the opposite conversation right now. So if I'm a Miami coach, why would you there's no point right now just saying Tyler Van Dyke's the guy, Jake Garcia is the backup, because you have to prepare them both to be starters. You never know what's going to happen. I would hope they would both get a lot of 1 reps this spring. There's no reason not to. And listen, if Jake Garcia looks like, I don't want to start naming great quarterbacks, but if he looks that good, I think that Josh Gaddis will have to seriously consider doing what he did last year at Michigan, which is having an experienced guy start and then having the backup guy who might be a better quarterback and a better athlete have some packages, and then you go from there and see what develops.
You're making a great point. Josh Gaddis has shown a willingness to do that. So the onus goes to Jake Garcia to prove to the coaches that he's worthy of that type of platoon system. And I think it's now going to be one of the more interesting. I feel like I say this every day because there's just so many interesting subplots to the spring practice that's coming up. It's going to be so intriguing, so exciting to watch play out. And this is going to be one of the biggest ones now because, can Jake Garcia mount a legitimate challenge to Tyler Van Dyke? And I don't think we can answer that question as we sit here tonight. And I don't even think we could predict the answer to that question as we sit here tonight. But I think the fact that it's going to play out in spring practice makes it pretty darn interesting and makes spring practice more interesting. You agree with that?
Yeah, and I'll just add that it's very difficult for any first-year coach, no matter how much good graces he has, being a first-year head coach, to bench a guy who's one of the Heisman contenders, if you look at all the odds makers, and to go out on a limb and start the guy who most people would say this guy should not be the starter just based on what Tyler Van Dyke did. You pass by Tyler Van Dyke, and then all of a sudden Jake Garcia is worse in games than he is in practices, which happens. Who's the guy? I think the all-time greatest practice player I've ever seen was Kendall Tompkins. Was that his name? And then you put the guy in the game, and he couldn't even run a route. So there's a risk with bypassing your Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback for a guy who looks better in practice, but you don't know what you're going to get because he hasn't really played that much in a game. And I'd be shocked if Tyler Van Dyke's not the starter. I mean, look, Tyler Van Dyke's going to be the starter. It's nice for us to talk about as talking heads, but Tyler Van Dyke's going to be the starter. Jake Garcia might be the better guy. We might be saying that 2 years from now. We might say, wow, maybe Jake Garcia should have started in 2022. And instead of losing 2 games, they would have gone undefeated because look at what he's done. But right now, as we sit here and as the season's going to start, I can't imagine a legitimate way you can say that.
And I would agree with that. I mean, the one thing that we haven't discussed, but that you can't replace is all that experience that Tyler Van Dyke picked up the latter part of last year. And that's an advantage. I mean, I don't care if you have a new coaching staff. They're not going to ignore the fact that this kid played the last 7-8 games of the year and the type of numbers he put up and just the polish that he showed and how well he played and led the offense. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I think that in all likelihood that Tyler Van Dyke will be the quarterback against Bethune-Cookman in September. But I think the big question is, will Jake Garcia be getting his share of reps beginning in that game? And it's up to Jake to earn that in spring practice. So exciting news. Jake Garcia, full go for the start of spring. What that means remains to be seen. All right, we'll move on here to other news of the day. And I mentioned yesterday I was up at the Honda Classic this weekend, and I ran into Tyler Van Dyke, and he was up there with Restrepo, and they were checking out the PGA Tour event, looking very chipper, very happy, and very excited about everything that's going on in their lives between, the NIL deals with Life Wallet, between football, and they both have a couple pretty nice girlfriends too. So things are good for those guys, just in general. And we bring you a look today with Restrepo, and we talked to him a little bit about all these things, the NIL, spring practice. He's very confident. He feels this is his time now to shine in this new Miami offense. There's no more Mike Harley. There's no more Charleston Rambo. Josh Gaddis is going to come in looking for playmakers to step up. Matt, Xavier Restrepo expects to be one of those.
Listen, I don't need to talk about Xavier Restrepo. Everyone already knows what he can do. He can dive no matter what. he always dives. Doesn't matter where the ball is. He dives and catches it. But you're missing the biggest news of the day. Isn't this is the news of the day? And you haven't even mentioned the biggest news, which was in our Jake Garcia story, which is that two parents, are now allowed to go to every single minute of every single spring practice. So I'm trying to talk one of my college-age sons into transferring to Miami and walking onto the team, and then we can have the information for you guys. And look, maybe the media will be let out to every practice, every minute. I don't know. It's a new coach. But just in case, I'm trying to talk my kid into doing that. So, that would be great. That's the big news. That's the big news. Forget Xavier Restrepo and Jake Garcia. Big news. We got to find a kid, one of our kids, Gary, that can still get on the team, or maybe we could pretend to be a parent of some other kid who walks on. We got to get out there. I want to see this for myself every minute, every practice, all spring, period.
I'm with you. We'll work on that. Although I do think Mario is going to let the media out as well, at least at the beginning until they get into like more intense.
Why would you let parents out and not the media? Because we talk to the parents all the time. I mean, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but we talk to. I'm not talking about Jake Garcia's dad, who we have a story with. We're friendly with all these parents because we talk to them all during recruiting of their kids. So why not let us out? It's the same thing. These parents know football. They know what they're seeing. Spring practice, there's not a lot of secrets that you're unveiling in the spring. You're just installing stuff. So let the media out there. Listen, Mario doesn't have time to watch this because he's busy texting and calling recruits right now at 5 a.m. But if he was watching this, I would encourage him to let the media out there so we don't have to pretend to have children on the team.
All right, we mentioned Josh Gaddis. He's helping enormously in the recruitment of Seattle, Washington, 5-star offensive tackle Josh Connolly Jr., who put off signing in January so that he could take visits to Oregon and USC this month. The question will be, do either of those official visits sway him to stay on the West Coast as opposed to coming across the country and going to Miami? And Matt, it seemed like the Hurricanes had the edge here going into the month of March. Your thoughts really on can Josh Connolly be convinced at the end of the day to come across the country and become a Hurricane?
I'm not feeling good about it. And I said this back when he visited. If Miami had its choice, they wanted Josh Connolly to be a March visit. They didn't want the kid to visit a month and a half, 2 months before he's announcing a decision. Nobody wants that. The fact that Joshua, his dad calls him Joshua, so I'll call him Joshua. He's Josh Jr. The fact that Joshua didn't acquiesce to that, desire by Miami to put off the visit basically says to me he's not all that interested. If he was he didn't want to wait till March anyway. But if Miami blew him away so much he knew that was his home, he wouldn't have waited. If he had his druthers, I'm trying to use some weird words here just to keep people interested. If he had his druthers, Gary, he would have been a Hurricane on signing day if that's where he wanted to be. Obviously, he thinks the grass might be greener somewhere else. He didn't want Miami to be one of his March visits. And I think these last 2 visits, he wind up at one of those 2 schools because that's just recruiting, man. I mean, you don't see a lot of kids, for instance, who will visit a school officially in the contact period in the spring or early in the season and then go on their other 2 or 3 visits in December and January that wind up at that school they visited 3 months earlier, unless they go back again. It just doesn't happen often. That's just the reality of it. I'm not going to lie to you guys out there and say Miami's getting everybody. It's an uphill battle with the kid, but he's a 5-star offensive lineman. They're not going to give up. And Miami's had some surprises, right? So maybe this will be a pleasant surprise. Maybe I'll be wrong for once.
Yeah, I think it's problematic. I agree with you. I can't believe it, but I do. But I agree. I mean, he's got USC and Oregon visits this month, and if Miami can survive that, if anybody can do it, Mario Cristobal can do it. But that's a lot to survive. A West Coast kid from Seattle visiting those 2 schools and then deciding, no, I'm not going to go to one of these West Coast schools. I'm going across country to Miami. Obviously, Miami hopes he does. They want him very badly. He's a 5-star offensive tackle. We will be watching that very closely this entire month for sure. All right. We also have a spring preview today on the linebacker position, Matt, and very, very interesting position because it just seems like there's so much uncertainty here going into spring practice, and it's like you have these guys that were playing striker last year. And now you got a new defensive coordinator coming in. You got Charlie Strong, who's going to come in to coach them. I mean, just so many unknowns. I mean, it's my opinion that James Williams should be playing linebacker. I don't know if, whether he can be convinced of that this spring or not. But it just seems like that's what he should do for betterment of himself. Can somebody convince him of that? So you put all these elements together, and you might as well just put one big question mark at the linebacker position going into spring practice, Matt.
Yeah, and this is interesting. I was talking to Gil Frierson, and he's now calling himself a nickel. He says he's a linebacker, but he says his position is nickel. So I guess that means they're really going to be using him as a sort of a swing guy. Like they called it the striker position. So they're sort of using one of these positions. I guess you'd probably call it the strong side linebacker / striker / nickel, whatever you want to call it. But basically, he's going to be a coverage linebacker is what it sounds like. Responsibilities, I assume, covering running backs and tight ends out of the backfield, maybe some other responsibilities. So they're looking for that hybrid safety / linebacker type, and he fits that role. And to me, that's the more interesting part about linebackers. You have all this, a brand new system, new coaches. And so, I mean, technically, I guess they're going to be doing a lot of 4-2-5, but it'll probably look more like a 4-3, which I find fascinating. We're going to see how they sort of line up and how they use that position. But that to me is the really interesting swing position there, how they're sort of rebranding that striker position. And if they can get a star player, I think a James Williams, for instance, would be, it's almost like a rover in a way, right? I mean, if you get a James Williams who can cover and blitz and do all these different things in that position, he's so much more athletic, not to take anything away from Gil Frierson, but he's just a freak, and to me, that seems like a great spot for James Williams. And maybe that's where they'll wind up putting him, because then maybe you can convince him, hey, you're still sort of a safety. It's not the end of the world for you, James. You can still sort of call yourself a safety or a nickel or a linebacker or whatever you want to call yourself. But to me, that's most interesting. The other two spots, you don't see anybody right now who you go, wow, maybe they'll hit the portal and grab somebody. I expect they will. But I think Corey Flagg's fine. I'm hoping a Tyreek Austin Cave can emerge. Deshaun Troutman's tiny. I don't know why people think he'll be great. I think he's 5'7". They list him at 5'9". What are you doing to me?
I'm tired of looking at the horse. That picture's got to go.
Oh God. And then the other spot, Keontre Smith's okay, and they got some. Look, Sam Brooks hopefully will be healthy finally. I think he's really good. And Avery Huff has a lot of ability, but he has to learn a whole new system. He took 2 years to learn the last system, so maybe that'll work out. But there's talent at linebacker. Defensive line we talked about yesterday. I wasn't as sure about the overall defensive line talent. I feel like there is talent at linebacker, but they just got to figure out how to use it and tackle. That's really been the problem at linebacker is tackling. So that's many missed tackles and just blowing angles, I should say. They just take the wrong angles a lot of times. They think they're faster than they are or something. I don't know. But if they can fix those problems, they got the talent there, and I like the new nickel spot, the nickel linebacker spot, apparently, whatever they want to call that. So we'll see how that goes.
All right, in honor of John Ruiz, who's replacing the horse above Matt's right shoulder, let's hear from our friends at Life Wallet.
Hey, Morgan, what are you going to do?
I have to go to practice.
Me too.
Well, don't forget your Life Wallet.
Oh my gosh, I always forget my Life Wallet.
You forget everything.
I can't go anywhere without my Life Wallet.
Life Wallet. Saving time, saving lives.
I get a kick out of that. I don't know why, but all right. Other recruiting news on the site today. We've got a story on Mac Markway. He's a 6'4", 250-pound tight end from St. Louis, and Miami is his top 4. He's going to be visiting the Canes on April the 2nd, and Matt, I think Miami's right in the middle of this one, obviously, and it'll be interesting to see where things stand once he takes the visit. But he's talking to Steve Field every week, and I mean, there's other tight ends Miami's going to be recruiting as well. But Mac Markway is definitely one to watch. Yeah,
and I counted the other day. Miami's given out 731 scholarship offers since Mario Cristobal took the job. So, no, I'm just kidding. I have no idea how many he's given out. It feels like 731. That feels like a very fair number. But my point is, they've offered so many guys, and Mac Markway is another one. I just don't know who they really want anymore. Whatever their board looks like, whatever their board used to look like in those Miami offices, I hope they got a 50-foot ceilings now, because their board has exponentially grown. I feel like every 4-star and 5-star has been offered. They're actually actively recruiting everybody. Every kid I talk to is hearing from Miami every day. Even kids who Miami's not really recruiting is hearing from Miami every day. Like, it's a little crazy. So I don't understand. Like, I get it, Mac Markway's coming to visit. What I still can't wrap my head around is they're not really pushing to get commitments. So when kids want to commit, if they're 5th or 50th on the board, I just don't know where they say, okay, you can commit, or okay, nah, sorry, whatever. I don't know what they're going to tell the kids. But it's going to be nice because I have a feeling this will be the first time in a while Miami is actually turning away commitments, quality commitments, I should say, turning away quality commitments. I think that's going to happen this year, believe it or not, because they're recruiting all these kids like they're the number one priority. All these kids feel like they're at the top of the board when really they're somewhere between 1 and 50 at every position. So Mac Markway is really, really good. I imagine they would take him if he wants to come. And out of that top 4, listen, I don't know, man. I mean, LSU, Ohio State, and Iowa. I got to think that that's a lot of competition, right? At least with the first 2. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But he's coming back. He's been here before. He's come with his dad. He's super interested. Miami does a really good job of selling these kids and getting these tight ends. Jaleel Skinner, for instance. So nothing would shock me with him.
All right, no, still on the website today, we have a story about the basketball team, which is looking to wrap up its double bye at the ACC tournament tonight with a game at Boston College. If Miami wins, it'll lock up the 4th seed in Brooklyn next week. And Matt, it's important they win tonight for obvious reasons. I mean, they've been slipping a little bit lately, but lock up this number 4 seed, get ready for the postseason, and then hope you can recapture some of the magic that you showed earlier this year.
You know what bothers me? I can't wrap my head around why. I'm a basketball fan. I'm a football fan. I'm a baseball fan. I don't understand why I am not excited about watching the Miami Hurricanes in the ACC tournament. I just want to see them skip ahead to the NCAA tournament. I want them to
they've lost momentum. They don't have the same. I've never been excited about that.
I've never been excited about them winning the regular season ACC title. I don't think that's a big deal. I think winning the ACC tournament's neat, but I don't really care that much. Like, to me, it's just the NCAA tournament. Like, that's all I care about. I don't know why. What's wrong with me? Like, when it's football, I really care about the ACC championship game. Like, I want them in there, and I want Miami to win, not just as a fan, but as a reporter. It's a lot more fun to cover a team that can do that. But for some reason with basketball, like, I don't have that excitement level. I feel bad. I'm just telling the truth. Fans are going to be upset with me. It's just the truth. I can't understand. I don't know if it's a team thing. Like, they're just not that exciting to me anymore.
I think it's because of the way the season has gone. Like,
or maybe the season's just too long. They got to make the season. I have a very short attention span. Anything more than 11, 12 games, I check out. I guess.
No, come on. When they walked out of Cameron Indoor with that victory earlier in the season,
yeah, that was great.
You were fired. You had to be fired up about basketball.
Yeah, that was a great
and
game.
They've kind of been like sort of limping home here. They've lost some games. They lost a couple to Florida State. I mean,
are you excited to watch them beat BC? I don't really care.
No, but like when you look at the season, they've done great with the best teams in the ACC, and then they've dropped some games they shouldn't have dropped along the way here with the middle tier.
There's a lot of parity other than those bottom teams. Anyone in the ACC can win any given day, basically, unless it's against Duke for the most part. So not the Virginias and Virginia Techs. Those are good teams. Wake Forest is a good team, even though Miami beat them twice. Like, these are not bad teams. These are teams sort of at Miami's level, honestly. And they're a a game behind Miami entering tonight. So, whatever. But look, it's nice for Miami to get a double bye. It doesn't bother me if they were 5th and didn't get a double bye. You watch an extra game, you get an extra win, get your 22, 23 wins in the regular season, hip hip hooray, go to the NCAA tournament. I think they're in the NCAA tournament either way, unless somehow they drop these last 3 games. These last 2 regular season games and the first game of the ACC. I think they'd have to lose all 3. I can't imagine that happening. I think they beat BC easily tonight. I mean, BC is not good. Not good. Jim Lardack makes it sound like every team's amazing. They're not good.
All right, well, that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. We hope everyone has a great day. For Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. We thank you for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow, everybody.